Greetings, travelers, and welcome back to Goldbound, the zone-locked challenge where our rogue, Goldylocked, is exploring Azeroth one zone at a time. The rules: each zone can only be unlocked once we've earned enough gold to purchase a WoW token, and that price is dictated by the market, always changing, and usually out of reach. And this is a solo self-bound journey. No trading and no outside help. We can gather, craft, kill, and vendor within our current zones. But the auction house, that's only for selling what we earned. And last episode, we cracked open the gates of Redridge, did some questing, looted what we could, and in the process, we blasted past Chromie time. So Goldylocked is now sitting at level 70, with just over 50,000 gold in the bags. But let's not get too comfortable, because that token price, well, it's still climbing. So if we're going to have any shot at breaking out of here, it's time to roll up our sleeves and dig deeper, into the caves, into the cliffs, and into the mobs most players walk right by. Because Redridge still has a lot of secrets, and some of them are hiding gold. So welcome back to Redridge Mountains. And while we're exploring Redridge, it got me thinking, back to when I first dipped my toes into the world of gold farming. And funny enough, it all started during Mist Pandaria. There's a few farms in MoP that just clicked. So if you're just getting back into the game, or maybe like me, trying out a whole new playstyle, then I recommend checking out Goldcap. It's hands down the best gold making hub I've come across. They've got detailed guides for flipping and farming across every version of the game. Retail, Classic, and even MoP Classic. They do offer a membership that gives you access to some of the newest gold farms the moment they're dropping, plus access to the premium Discord. And that's where the real value kicks in. Not only can you ask questions directly to the guide creators, whether it's about farm routes, add-on setups, or optimizing your gold farming, but you can also link up with other players for group farms. It's basically a gold maker's guild hall, and in these zones, we're largely learning as we go, exploring each zone, testing the drops, and figuring it out with you. But in the Goldcap Discord, these folks live this stuff, and they know the current content farms that can deliver. So, if you want to support the channel and try out the whole gold farming lifestyle yourself, use my link below and enter code Pathalerix10 at checkout for 10% off your purchases or your membership. Alright, travelers, we've been chasing high-ticket transmogs across the peaks of Redridge. And while that hunt's been exciting, if we're going to make it out of here before Winter's Veil, we need something steady, something reliable, something that just makes gold. So in an attempt to find that, we're seeing what we can do with the dire Condors. While leveling through Redridge, I noticed something interesting with these mobs. These birds actually carry a trade good in their loot tables. It's a simple item, but one with surprisingly solid market value, and more importantly, a consistent drop rate. Now, these Condors spawn in two primary locations, and after some trial and error, I found that the best rhythm was just to stick to the three corners, the bottom left, taking the birds as they spawn, and we swoop in and kill them. The respawns here aren't exactly instant, and I don't think it's a hyper spawn, but if they ever bug out or slow down, you can just jog over to the second camp to get things rolling again. And as a rogue, shooting these Condors straight out of the sky with our rifle, honestly, pretty satisfying. Let's talk about the loot. The main drop, and the reason we're here, is the small egg. It's a crafting trade good with a region market value hovering between 6 and 9 gold most of the time, and it sells fast. And one of the main reasons this has value, and also why its price is vary wildly throughout the year, is that it's actually a currency for the Winter's Veil event. So, come December, these eggs can push 20 to 30 gold a piece on some realms. Not a bad thing to stockpile, but it's not exactly Winter's Veil right now, but maybe we'll have to swing back around here once there's some snow on the mountains. And outside of the eggs, the Condors also drop a variety of greens. There's nothing wild and no major high-ticket transmog here, but a few decent drops if you get lucky. So, what did the hour look like? Well, we took down 280 Condors in the 60 minutes, which is a pretty good pace. As a beast, they drop a lot of vendor trash. This whole bag full here was worth about 5 gold, mostly bones, talons, and feathers. And as far as small eggs, they do drop about 66% of the time, so with 280 kills, we got 175, giving us about 1200 gold at the current prices. And tough Condor meat, well, we grabbed the 128. These are only about 35 silver each, but still another 46 gold to add on. As far as notable transmog, there's only 3 that actually dropped from the Condors. The light hunting bow, which has a basic look but might sell to a collector for a few hundred gold, but probably not. Then there's the Raider's short sword. A low value of 50 gold, but a high sale rate, and a decent appearance, so I think it's worth posting on the auction house. And the Gleaming Claymore. Not bad, 300 gold market value with a modest sale rate, and a nice look as well. this one might actually move. And we also snagged a few incidental drops from nearby gnolls, orcs, and foxes, but nothing of note. And if they don't sell fast, we'll probably just vendor these off anyways. And since we were flying around, we still had mining and herbs, and we kept an eye out for anything on the route. Easy grabs that were raped by Condors. So we got 35 copper ore, 9 earth root, 2 swift thistle, and 5 briar thorn. And with these prices floating around 3 to 4 gold each, that's an extra couple hundred gold. Not game changing, but it helps round out the haul. And if you're wondering why I didn't take skinning for all this, well, the funny thing is that you can't actually skin Condors, even though they're a beast. No idea why. Maybe Blizzard didn't want us making Condor leather boots, but yeah, it is what it is. So, tallying it all up, no transmog clips included, we're looking at about 1500 gold for an hour here. But this is raw materials and consistent trade goods, so it'll move pretty quickly. But it's steady and dependable, and something we can repeat over and over while we wait for the higher ticket transmog to sell. And who knows, every now and then, we might get a decent transmog piece from these guys too. And we'll definitely earmark this for when Winter's Veil comes around, because these things might be worth a lot more then. Alright, with the steady gold farm now locked in, I think it's time to start transmog hunting. But not just any transmog. We're going to go ahead and flag every notable rare spawn in Redridge, the kind that we'll be swooping past during herbalism loops, and logging kills as we go. All with the aim of some seriously big ticket mog. Think Motherfang, and think Thoreau's Lightfingers. But this time, it's Redridge's turn. And we're starting with a strong, heavy hitter, Ro the Silent. That's if you can see him. You see, Ro lurks up north in Galardil Valley, and true to his name, he can be pretty hard to find. He's stealthed, which means, unless you know exactly where to look, you may just walk right by him. Nestled up just in front of the cave, where he usually spawns, but it's not the only place. Ro has 1 or 2 other spawn points scattered around this area, and tracking him down can be a little difficult. But here's why he's worth the effort. His loot table. Not bad overall, with plenty of greens that fetch a few hundred gold, but there's 2 major standouts. First up is the Cloak of Night. It's sleek, rare, and stylish. It holds both a 1.9% drop rate and sells for around 20,000 gold on most markets. It's a staple piece for any serious transmog hunter, but that's just the appetizer. Ro also drops the Black Venom Blade. Now this dagger doesn't boast a unique appearance, but the only other source for its appearance is a soulbound quest reward. That means for collectors who are chasing every single appearance in the game, the Black Venom Blade is the only purchasable option available. And it's rare. I mean really rare. Wowhead pins it at a 0.3% drop rate. And if that's even close to accurate, it explains the 170,000 gold market value that it carries. Next up on the Redridge rare rotation is one that's a little bit easier to spot. Meet Chatter. She lurks just east of Lakeshire, tucked along the path where players will cross constantly. No stealthing and no subtlety. And her loot table? Well, it's also loaded with mid-tier greens, mostly hovering in the 200 to 500 gold range. Nothing particular to write home about, except for one, the Tarantula Silk Sash. This belt is a unique appearance, and for any transmog collector aiming for that elusive 100%, it's a non-negotiable. And according to Wowhead, it carries a 0.3% drop rate as well. But let's talk about that for a second. See, the sash was removed from the game for a while, but Chatter was kept in, which means a huge chunk of kill data on Wowhead is skewed towards logging drops when the sash wasn't even available. So while it says 0.3%, it might not be so rare. But we'll do our best to update this data with a little bit of farming in Redridge. And regardless, the sash commands a market value of 84,000 gold. And that's if you can even find it listed. But let me tell you, here's where it gets fun. See, while leveling through Redridge, before I'd even done the deep dive on rare loot, I walked across Chatter and I took her down. And on the second kill, yep, I got the Tarantula Silk Sash in the bags. The sad part was, I didn't know what to look for when I was killing her, and I didn't appreciate how spooned I just got. And crazy enough, it doesn't end there. While filming this segment, I tracked her down again for my 4th kill. And I can't believe this, but we got the sash again. Now, I know the drop rate might be higher than the reported 0.3%, but come on, it's still gotta be like 2 or 3%. So we're getting insanely lucky here. So we've now added a pair of sashes to the transmog market collection, up for sale. With a drop like that on the table, we'll be taking it down every chance we get. And if I'm being honest, Chatter and Ro are the 2 crown jewels as far as rares of Redridge. They're really the only ones here with drops breaking the 1 to 2k mark. And the rest of rares are definitely still worth tagging and worth logging kills. But we're looking more at transmog in the 200 to 1000 gold range. And while it doesn't sound all that impressive compared to some of the drops we just talked about, that stuff does move a little bit more regularly on the markets. Anyways, as the Goldbound journey has continued, Goldylocked has started to sharpen his instincts, not just as a rogue, but as a treasure hunter. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Now you may have noticed, but I try to keep my UI clean with mostly just the essentials and the classic WoW look. But I'll admit it, I'm a sucker for gold-focused add-ons. So let me show you how I scout out these zones, Redridge or otherwise. While I just talked about a whole bunch of cool rare items you can farm in Redridge, you might want to farm other ones in other zones. First up is Rare Scanner. I've been using this add-on to mark every rare spawn directly on the map, and it also throws up a notification if I happen to fly over one while doing herb loops or other farms. Here's the best part, is the hover over icon. It shows their entire loot table. If you pair that with an add-on like Trade Skill Master, which displays real-time market data in your game, you've suddenly got instant insight into what valuable items a rare might drop. So you're not just guessing what's valuable, you know. You can hover through every single rare in a zone to see which one might be worth taking down. So yeah, Redridge's rares might not all be dripping with legendary loot, but they definitely still serve a purpose. And we're going to be logging kills, and stocking our auction house shelves. But because these guys are on a bit of a longer spawn timer, they're best farmed in the background, while we're doing farm loops on herbs and ores, or other more traditional farms. So let's get after one of those. So, I set out on a quest to gather some of our old reliable materials, and snag a few herbs from Redridge for some crafting. The goal? 2,000 copper ore, just to see how fast we can grind it out. And the route? Well, we're going to be doing one big loop between Redridge and Elwynn, the only two zones we have unlocked right now. This longer loop path gives us more breathing room for ore to respawn, and makes sense for increasing ore per hour. Now at first on this loop, I was just picking up everything. Ores, herbs, you name it. But about an hour in, we only had 150 or so copper ore. Not exactly blazing speed when you're targeting 2,000. So, staying on the route, I focused on only grabbing the ores, copper, tin, and silver. And then, we went full throttle, and this was an epic farm session. It didn't stop until we hit 2,000 copper ore. This grind clocked in over just 6.5 hours. But I wasn't alone. This entire run was streamed, and I was joined by fellow travelers along the way. So, if you want to tune in for the next one, keep an eye out for future Goldbound streams right here on the channel. This farm left us with a Herculean amount of copper ore to process. I smelted it down during some massive AFK sessions. For about half of them I was actually just building a new desk in my office. So, min-maxed the time a little bit. And once it was all smelted into bars, I dove right back into engineering, crafting some rough blasting powder to hit level 30. And then, just churning out 1,500 or so copper bolts. I left a few bars just so we're selling 2 different items to increase the sale rate. And between the bolts and the bars, we're looking at about 5 gold each of raw copper value. From the copper ore in the farm alone, roughly 10,000 gold in potential profit. But of course, that's not all that we pulled. We walked away with over 200 tin and about 50 silver. Now unfortunately, we're still locked into the Elwynn profession trainers, so we can't actually pick up any newer, higher level crafting recipes to boost the value of the tin or the silver. And weirdly, both tin bars and silver bars are selling for less than the raw ore counterparts. So for now, they'll just be sold off as is. And for the herbs, we grabbed a few on the first loops, nothing major, but enough to mill down into some pigments. The Elwynn herbs gave us alabaster pigments, which of course become moonglow ink, and which means more glyphs. And this time around, Glyph of the Stars wasn't the only one worth crafting, so we spread things out and made a few extras. And the Redridge herbs like Swift Thistle and Briarthorn gave us dusky pigments, converting those into inks, doing some research, and we unlocked an entirely new batch of glyphs. We didn't have a ton of ink yet, so I'll only craft a few of each to post and test the market. We'll likely come back to herbalism and inscription for a deeper dive soon, because there's definitely more potential here than meets the eye. And with all that wrapped up, I've gone ahead and posted all of the trade goods to the auction house, hopefully giving this episode's mailbox clean a little extra oomph. Now, let's take a moment to zoom out and consider the bigger picture, this challenge and the journey, and the next possible steps. So right now, we've only unlocked 2 zones, Elwynn Forest and Redridge Mountains. But that opens the door to some new options for the next unlock. Let's start with Elwynn. From here, we still have the 2 possible paths, one of which is Westfall, which would grant us access to the Dead Mines dungeon, a true classic, and a potential source of some serious income. Then there's Dun Moreau, which opens the gates to Nomergan. Again, a dungeon that could unlock some massive drops. And a quick side note, to scout out these zones and show a full breakdown, I did log on to my main Pathalerix, so don't worry, Goldylocked is still safely inside the allowed zones. But this way, we can actually see the zones discovered on the map. So now let's have a look at Redridge, and where these paths actually lead. First up, and to the north, is the Burning Steppes. Now this one would be spicy. There's higher level mats, higher level mobs, and it opens up the possibility of Blackrock Mountain. But there's a wrinkle on this. See, Blackrock is also accessible through the Searing Gorge, which opens up a question. Which zone actually unlock dungeon and raid cluster inside the mountain? Would it be Burning Steppes, or would it be Searing Gorge? That's something we'll have to decide, and I'd love to hear what you think down below in the comments. But next up, heading south from Redridge through the narrow path at the 3 corners, we can now enter Duskwood. Now this is a fan favorite early leveling zone. I honestly love the quest lines here, the atmosphere, the mobs, and the story. Plus, there's some interesting drops. But like Elwynn and Redridge, it's another zone without a dungeon. Still, I'd be happy to get this one for sure. And finally, through the southeastern mountain pass in Redridge, Harborage Pass, we can go into the Swamp of Sorrows. This one is a wild card. It has access to Sunken Temple, and a fair number of rare spawns, and a whole new tier of gathering materials. Honestly, any of these zones would be awesome to explore, but we've got some work to do before we can unlock our next destination. So it's back to the grind. More farming and more gold before we can spin for our next path. And what better way to break up the grind than by diving into one of the biggest hit or miss farms in the entire game. Fishing. Now, I'm committing to giving fishing a shot in every zone we unlock, at least for half an hour or so, just enough time to level up a little bit and see what the local waters have. So, off we go, to the wharf in Redridge. Now, we only did a little fishing back in Elwynn, so our skill level is only sitting in the low 40s, which means it looks like most of the first few casts here in Redridge is mostly trash. But we can still stick it out for a little bit, just to give it a fair try, and see what really fishes up here. But after a little bit, it's pretty apparent that there's no major gold that's going to be coming from Redridge's waters. The fish are still only about 30 silver a pop, and we did gain a few fishing levels, which will help in future zones, especially ones that have fish that might actually sell. If we look at the half-hour loot appraiser, it's saying that we're averaging 3,000 gold. But if we take a quicker look, most of that value actually came from one item, an old boot. And so this is a gray item that's not even equipable, so it's just a novelty that only actually sells for 5 gold on average. We're unloading most of this trash to the local fishermen, cutting our losses, and moving on. Maybe Nat Pagel could pull a miracle out of these waters, but for now, I'll leave the Redridge fishing hole behind. But not so fast. That might not be all she wrote for fishing in Redridge, because unlike Elwynn, Redridge actually gives us access to fish pools. These are shimmering circles on the surface of the water that hold more than the regular waters around them. They're easy to miss, and each one only lasts for around 4 to 8 casts, and you have to make sure your fishing bobber is landing inside the circle. But what they can contain makes them worth scouting out. So in Redridge, the standout here are sagefish pools. And no surprise, they do yield sagefish, but they also have a few other drops on their tables. First up is the Rumsey Rum Black Label, which, to be honest, is a little more of a novelty and not really carrying any value. Same thing with Strangle Kelp, which isn't necessarily worth farming. But the real prize here is the Watertight Trunk. Now, Wowhead isn't giving me exact drop rates, but these trunks only show up in 2 types of fish pools. Sagefish schools, which are here in Redridge, and the only other pool that they spawn in is Schooner Wreckage, which is again located in a few other zones around Azeroth. But what's inside? That's where it gets a little spicy. First up, you got a decent chance at heavy leather and silk cloth. And these are materials that we can't reliably get in our current zones. So depending on the recipes we unlock later, this could come in pretty clutch. And there's also a tiny chance, about 0.3%, at a few transmog pieces and recipes. And while the odds are low, some of those pieces are worth a few thousand gold, and the recipes we wouldn't be able to obtain on the auction house. So it's definitely something to look out for. But what we're really farming this for is the Weather Beaten Journal. And this thing has around an 8% drop rate from the Watertight Trunks. And once you read it on a character, that character learns how to track fish pools on the minimap. Now this isn't necessarily a huge win for Redridge specifically, but in the future, where the zones and the pools in them are more valuable, this will be a big quality of life upgrade. So we'll definitely be casting into a few schools while we're out here, not just for a little bit of gold, but to try and reel in one of the best fishing upgrades we can for the long haul. And with a few more items, rares, and fish on our hit list, I figured it was time to circle back to an old nemesis, Gnoll Feaster. If you remember our epic duel last episode, it gave us a proper fight, and it turns out it's still the only mob in Redridge that can. You see, Gnoll Feaster was added after the Cataclysm, which means it doesn't follow the same Chromie time rules as the rest of Redridge. Ever since we hit level 70, we've outscaled most of the zone, except for this guy. He still hits like a current content boss. But the real reason we were tagging him was the Tarantula pet, which after killing him a few more times without the drop, I did some research and it turns out it's actually a one-time drop per character. You can't necessarily farm an army's worth in Goldie's future. But hey, we can still sell one, get a few gold, or we can decide to keep it and use it for battle pets. We'll see if it sells in the auction house, otherwise we'll probably just keep it as a battle pet. And with that wrapped up, it's been a pretty productive episode for Goldylocked. So let's head over to the local mailbox for one of my favorite moments, the fresh mailbox tally. And of course, a slash played reveal. Alright, straight into the mailbox. First up, we're met with 112 mails sold. And starting off, we have some standard trade goods, a few glyphs being sold, and random items we got throughout the zone. The first semi-notable transmog piece to move, the Buccaneer's Pants. This is a fast-moving lower ticket classic item, sold for about 700 gold. Not challenge breaking, but some decent gold along the way. And we also managed to sell off our one and only Redridge Tarantula, which went for 285 gold. And hey, a few extra coins in the pouch, we really can't complain. One of the biggest trade goods this round, 1,046 copper bolts sold in one go for 4,969 gold. That's a proper drop in the bucket. And scrolling down further, a second pair of Buccaneer's Pants sold for 667 gold. The Buccaneer set is a lower ticket, high volume transmog set that we always want to keep on the auction house. And we do have a few more trade goods trickling in, and a nice little bonus one of our Tarantula silk sashes from Chatter sold. Now, we did get a lot of these, so I tossed one up at a fire sale price, and it moved. But that's not the only one that moved. We had another Scimitar of Atune sell for 9,000 gold. Not bad at all. That's a very solid profit just from taking out a few hundred Murlocs. So let's go ahead and clear out the rest, and there'll just be 12 mails remaining. But of course, we have to appreciate that classic gold jingle. And there wasn't anything crazy in the last batch, but we did sell the Burnt Buckler. This was just a little white shield that we picked up along the way. So, all in all, that puts us at 28,000 gold for the episode. And we're going to need a few more high ticket sales, or to unlock a few more optimized farms if we want to have any shot at meeting the current WoW token prices of 298,000 gold anytime soon. But of course, next up, the Slash Blade, coming in at 7 days and 19 hours. Looks like we got some work cut out for old Goldie, but I'm here for it. And may your blades never dull.